So good day, everyone. So on this session, we are going to tackle about the unemployment, which is one of the common issues here in the Philippines. And not just only here in the Philippines, but also to the other countries and even the other parts of the world. So what is unemployment? So unemployment connotes the absence of employment or a condition when the person is out of work though he is willing and able and is actively looking for a work. So yung lahat ng mga tao na walang trabaho pero naghahanap sila ng trabaho, they are actively looking for a job, so they are part of the unemployment. So actually, ang unemployment is we can differentiate this into two cases. So we have the voluntary and the involuntary. So while everyone would think of unemployment as an economic problem, there are, however, two ways, no, two cases through which the person would be identified as part of the unemployed people, okay? Unemployed people, or would become out of job. So it is very possible that the person has no job, no? That this person has no job because he is not willing to sell his labor. And this phenomena is what we call as voluntary unemployment. So voluntary unemployment means an unemployed person who is not willing to sell his job. So actually, this case is not an economic problem because no one can compel to work if he is not willing to. So the other case naman is the involuntary unemployment. On this, when we define involuntary unemployment, the person has no job though he is willing to work and he is actively looking for a job, but he could not find a job. So that is why this involuntary unemployment is an economic problem. So here, the labor as resource would be wasted, no? It would be wasted. So, dito, because we cannot control things, right? And we are actively looking for a job, but no one would hire us, maybe because we are not qualified, or maybe because marami ding mga nag-a-apply for that work. So, possible na mabilong tayo sa pagiging unemployed. Okay? So that is why it is an economic problem because supposedly yung mga tao na yun, they are willing to sell their labor pero it turns out into waste kasi hindi sila na employed. So there are concepts related to unemployment. So we have here the labor force. So when we say labor force, this is the portion of the total population who are 15 years old and over and who are either employed or unemployed. And another concept related to unemployment is the self-employment. So this is a condition in which a person works for himself. So basically, they engage in and operates his own business rather than working for an employer who gives a pay of or a wage. No? So these are what we call self-employed person. Yung mga businessman or yung may mga negosyo, ang tawag sa kanila is mga self-employed because they sustain, no, or they work for themselves. So we have an example of self-employment. We have farmers and ranchers. We have shop owners, mga wholesalers, and even mga retailers. So another concepts related to unemployment is the underemployment. So underemployment happens, no, when a person is employed but not in the desired capacity, which could be in the aspect of compensation, or the compensation is based on the number of hours of work, or the level of expertise and experience. So examples of the underemployed are part-time lecturers or mga part-time tutors or other mga part-timers. So another concept is we have hidden unemployment. So in the hidden unemployment, people who are unemployed but have given up job search are not counted in the official unemployment statistics. So actually, the official unemployment figures only include persons who are unemployed but are actively looking for a job or work. So here, those people, no, who have given up job searching is part of the hidden unemployment. Some of the statisticians thought that these people are actively looking for a job, but in the mere fact, hindi na pala sila active. So we have an example of hidden unemployment. We have discouraged workers, maybe because parang napapagod na siya na maghanap ng trabaho, or he is tired looking for a job at to the point na wala talagang tatanggap sa kanya, so na-discourage na siya. So let's proceed with the calculation. So in calculating unemployment rate, we have this formula. Actually, the unemployment rate is the percentage of unemployed people with respect to the labor force, or those people who are 15 years old and above, whether he or she is unemployed or employed. Another is we have labor force participation rate. So this is the percentage of the total number of person in the labor force, yung mga pwede na mag-work, to the total population who are 15 years old and over. So in getting the labor force participation rate, so you simply divide LF, which is the total number of persons in the labor force, by the population times 100. No? Total population 15 years old and over. So another is we have the underemployment rate. So underemployment rate is defined as the percentage of the total number of underemployed person, no? So, to the total number of employed person. So, you simply divide total number of underemployed person by total number of employed person. So, times 100. Now, this time we are going to answer the following given. We have here the adult population, or those population who are 15 years old and above. So we have 115 million. The labor force, we have 85 million. The employed, we have 70 million. Then the underemployed, we have 10 million. So we have to calculate the following: the unemployment rate, the labor force participation rate, and the underemployment rate. So now let's solve this one. So this time we are going to find the unemployment rate. Okay? So take note that unemployment rate, in getting this one, we have to calculate for first the unemployed persons, no, divided by labor force, no, times 100. So since unemployed people are not yet calculated, so we have to calculate that one. So take note that unemployed is equivalent to labor force minus employed. And take note, we have here underemployed. So we have also to consider underemployed here. So we have to consider underemployed. No? So our labor force is 85 million. no? So it is 85 million. Um, minus we have employed, which is 70 million, and plus the underemployed, we have 10 million. Okay? So we have here 85 million minus 70 plus 10, we have 80. 80 million. Okay, so 85 million minus 80 million, we have 5 million. And this 5 million are unemployed. No? Total of unemployed person. So now we can now calculate the unemployment rate given the value of the unemployed, which is 5 million. So you have here, let's calculate the unemployment rate. So you have here 5 million divided by the labor force. No? Take note that the labor force is the total population of those who are employed and unemployed. Okay? So we have 85 million. So let's calculate this one. Let's search for the calculator. So we have 5 million divided by 85 million. So our unemployment rate here is we have 0.0588. So 0.0588 times 100. So we have here our unemployment rate, which is we have 5.88%. So this is now our unemployment rate. Now let's look for the labor force, no, participation rate. So take note that labor force participation rate can be calculated using labor force divided by the adult population, or the population, those who are 15 years old and above. So adult population times 100. So our labor force here is we have 85 million. Divide by the population, which is 115 million. Times 100. So now let's use our calculator. So we have 85 million divided by 115 million. So here we have the labor force participation rate of 0.7391. So multiply it by 100. So in order to convert it into a percentage, our labor force participation rate is 73.91%. So this is now our labor force participation rate, which is 73.91%. Now, let's find the underemployment rate. So in calculating the underemployment rate, we have to use the underemployed data. So here, our underemployment rate, no, is we have underemployed divided by the total employed person times 100. So now, we divide 10 million by 70 million. So here, we divide 10 million by 70 million. So the 10 million here are the total persons who are underemployed, while 70 million is the total person who are employed. So you have to multiply it into 100 so that we can get the percentage. So here we have 10 million divided by 70 million. So we have 0.1428, no? 0.1428 times 100. So we have 14.28%. So this is now our underemployment rate. So based on the calculation, our unemployment rate is 5.88%. And our labor force participation rate is 73.91%. And our underemployment rate is 14.28%. So how about here, given this data? So let's answer the unemployed persons and the unemployment rate, the labor force participation rate from year 2013 up to 2017. So can you try it in your paper? So can you post this? You may post this video for a minute. Okay? So are you done answering? So let's check if your answer is correct. So here, we simply deduct in total employed from labor force. So we have here an unemployed of 10 million and unemployment rate 10 divided by the labor force, you have 8%. Then the labor force participation rate here is 50%. So now let's check if your answer for 2014 to 2017 are correct. So we have here 7. The unemployment rate is 5.11%. Then the labor force participation rate is 51.31%. So how about here? We have 5 million unemployed. We have an unemployment rate of 3.33%, then a labor force participation rate of 53.57%. And here, we have 2 million unemployed person. So our unemployment rate here is 1.21%. Then we have here 58.60%. And in 2017, we have 7 unemployed, no? 7 million unemployed. Then unemployment rate is 4%, and the labor force participation rate is 60.34%. So did you get the right answers? So if so, then congratulations. Yay! So now let's proceed to the different types of unemployment. Actually, unemployment no, is an economic problem. If there are many people who have no job but they are actively looking for a job. But it depends on the nature of the problem. So, and these are the frictional, the structural, and the seasonal unemployment. And also, we have cyclical unemployment. So first, let's talk about the frictional unemployment. So here, there is a temporary type. No, this is a temporary type of unemployment which is caused by a temporary mismatching between the job openings and job seekers. So this is very common to all. No, there are people or there are people who are graduate from education but they shifted to the other type of jobs. Like there are people who are an education graduate, but then they turned out into being a sales agent, no? So there are accounting people, no? Who graduated from BSA, but it turns out they become a teacher, no? So there is a mismatch, no, between the job openings and the job seekers. So here in this type, there are jobs available and there are also those who are looking for a jobs. So the process of here, the process of leaving a job in order to move to another job normally takes time, during which the person becomes temporarily unemployed. So some economists call this as natural rate of unemployment. So as you can see in this graph, no? So this is the job acceptance. So this is now your labor force. So the voluntary unemployment exists here, no? So here, take note that the labor force refers to the total supply of labor. So job acceptances refers to workers who are prepared to accept work at the going wage rate. So the gap between the two curves represents the voluntary unemployment. So another type of unemployment is we have the structural unemployment. So this is a more long-term economic problem. So lots of people, no, there are lots of people who could not find jobs because there is a deficient demand, no, for labor in some sectors or regions of the country, no? And the demand for labor here is dependent upon the demand for the products or the services. This is what economists would call as derived demand. So the demand for labor depends on the number of product that you produce, no? That the employer would want to produce, because there are businesses that are dependent to labor, no? So technological change and product innovation would lead to structural unemployment, because instead of hiring labor, so some of the businesses would invest more on innovation and also on technologies. So kasi doon sila makakatipid or makaka-minimize ng cost. So why would they hire more labor which could cost them, no, higher than investing for technology? Mas mapapadali pa yung trabaho, 'di ba? So another is that long-term, no? Long-term mismatching between job openings and job seekers could be due to labor immobility. So we have here geographical immobility, industrial immobility, and occupational immobility. So when we talk about geographical immobility, it occurs when workers are not willing or able to move, no? Able to move from region to region or town to town. So actually this is made worse by immense variation, no? Variation in the cost of living between the regions. So other factors could also contribute to geographical immobility, such as strong social and family ties, the presence of schooling children whose education may have to be disrupted by the change of residence, and the stresses involved of moving home are also deterrent factors by the different factors for many people, making them less willing to move across regions. So that is why some of them, ayaw kasi nila mapalayo sa kanilang pamilya, or ayaw na nilang mag-adjust in terms of geographical, factor. So that is nagkaroon tayo ng geographical immobility. So industrial immobility, on the other hand, it occurs when workers do not move between industries, such as moving from employment in the construction industry to employment in the insurance industry. So here it's more on the industry, no? In the different industries. So the growth of service industries and the decline of manufacturing industries has increased the need for mobility, because there are people, no, from the manufacturing industry are not willing to adjust, no, for the service industry. So that is more on the industrial immobility. So lastly, we have the occupational immobility. So it occurs when workers find it difficult to change jobs within an industry. So for example, no, it may be difficult for a nurse to retrain to become a medical representative. So actually, industrial and occupational mobility are most likely to happen when skills are not transferable. So between the industry and the jobs. So labor mobility is aggravated by information failure. So if only information on job opportunities is readily available for job seekers, so it would be easier for them to move across the jobs, industries, and regions. So somehow information is really important, diba? So another type of unemployment is we have the cyclical unemployment. So this is actually caused by the fluctuation in the demand for labor, resulting from the changing market conditions, characterizing the phases of the business cycle. So we have four phases of business cycle. We have prosperity, recession, depression, recovery, and expansion. So every economy, whether it's rich or poor, they may experience fluctuation because of the various economic activities. And these economic activities, no, are part of the business cycle. So here, for the prosperity, no? So we have here the graph. This is the trend growth, no? And this is the business cycle. So in the prosperity, this is a very high aggregate demand, no, for goods. So when we say prosperity, like prosper, meaning very wealthy, no? So the high aggregate demand for goods and services in the economy. So here there is a high employment, causing resource prices to go up. And the cost of production here will be also very high. So that is why on this phase, meron tayo sa full employment. Okay? So after the prosperity, dito naman tayo sa recession, no? In between prosperity and depression. Recession happens when there is a slowdown of economic activity. So we can say that the economy is recession if there is a falling demand for goods and services, results to the streamlining of production. So here, layoff is a common scenario. So when we say layoff, maraming mga tao ang matatanggal, no, sa trabaho. Matatanggalan sila sa trabaho. So here, magkakaroon na tayo ng unemployment problem. So dito, less demand for goods and services may result to the lowering of the general price levels. If hindi pa maagapan yung recession, mapupunta tayo sa pagiging depression, pagiging depressed, no? So, depression happens when there is a prolonged and unaddressed recession. And that may lead the economy to experience depression. So, this is characterized when there is a very low aggregate demand for goods and services. So some firms who are unable to manage the adverse effects of the depression are forced to shut down and let go of the workers. So here, unemployment during this phase is very serious. So mataas talaga yung pagkakaroon ng unemployment dito. And another, we have recovery or expansion. So, kapag makaka-recover na tayo from depression, no? Meron ng recovery, no? So, actually, this phase is characterized by the gradual increase in aggregate demand for goods and services, restoring the vibrancy of the economy. So, with the rising demand for goods and services is increased, no? enthusiasm of the business sector to expand production levels and thus employ additional resources. Then, if we succeed, no, from recovery, makakamit din natin ulit yung prosperity. So, that's life, no? Para siyang business cycle. Minsan, prosper tayo, tapos may mga times na makaka-experience tayo ng recession, then to the point na madidepress tayo if di natin maagapan, then from depression we can recover, no? Then go back to being prosper. Okay? So lastly, we have the seasonal unemployment. From the word itself, season. So it depends on the season, no? So this is the type of unemployment that exists because of the seasonality in the production of some products or services. So actually, this is common in agriculture, tourism, and construction industry. So in agriculture, weather kasi yung mga pananim, di ba? So mayroong mga times na hindi tig-ani. So may mga times na maraming ani. So seasonal lang. Based on those types of unemployment, so some of them could cause problem to our economy. So what are the reasons why unemployment in the Philippines exists? So actually, there is no particular factor can be singled out to cause the unemployment problem. So because it is the product of the interplay, of many different factors. So in the Philippines, these are the common causes of unemployment. So first, we have the rapid growth of country's population or ang pagkalobo ng population. So the faster the population grows, the faster will be the growth of the labor force. If the country's production does not grow as fast to open more employment opportunities to the fast-growing workforce, more and more people will end up being unemployed and wanting for jobs. Kasi kapag maraming tao, di ba? Maraming gustong mag-supply ng kanilang skills or ng kanilang effort. Pero what if maliit lang yung demand? So, kakaroon tayo ng labor surplus. Diba? Magkakaroon ng labor surplus. Then, ang sa labor surplus, doon na mag-i-exist yung unemployment. So, another factor or causes is the development policies which favor capital-intensive technologies. So, in production, both capital and labor are essential and are used to complement each other. So, however, there are technological advancement results in production processes which employ more capital relative to labor. So, resulting to the displacement of some workers in industry. Kasi ngayon, marami na mga technology. Instead of hiring more people, why not investing for this technology? Mas maka-save ka pa ng cost. Instead of hiring more people, which can add more labor costs. So, parang mapakita na ng mga capital-intensive technologies yung mga labor. Then, another is that the educational system. So, the educational system and curricular are not responsive to the fast-changing needs of the industry. So, that is why ngayon we shifted to K-12. So that we will become prepared and globally competitive. So the kind of training and skills that graduates get from educational institution must fit the needs of the industry. However, school curricula do not necessarily equip students with the kind of skills that are indeed in industries. So that is why it's really important to have these skills. Or not entrepreneurship, dapat kabalo jud ta. So, what are the current programs to curb the unemployment problem in the Philippines? We have here the TESDA, job fair, and having an entrepreneurship, diba? So, we have this various program. We have livelihood training programs, mga promotion of small and medium industries, mga reforms in educational system, for example, K-12, promotion of labor-intensive industry, no? More on sa service sector, program to encourage influx of more foreign investments, mga entrepreneurship trainings, job fairs, and even development of this person, no, to the countryside. Like, we encourage OFW, no, mga abroad. So these are the programs to curb the unemployment problem in the Philippines. So let's talk about the Phillips curve. No? Actually, the Phillips curve shows the relationship between inflation and unemployment. So take note that inflation and unemployment, when we say inflation, this is the situation where the price level of goods and services are increasing. And unemployment, this is a situation where there are people who have no jobs but actively looking for a job. So we can say that inflation to be two independent problems. Study, this Phillips curve derived from the study of Alban William Hosigo Phillips or A.W. Phillips in late 1950. So kaya siya tinatawag na Phillips curve. So it shows the relationship between the rate of wage inflation and unemployment using a 95-year data for the United Kingdom. So it shows an inverse relationship between inflation and unemployment rate. So as you can see, as the inflation rises, the unemployment rate declines, no? Or as the inflation rate goes down, the unemployment rate goes up. So the key understanding here is that it uses trade-off. So to look at the possible inflationary effects in both labor and product market arising from an increase in employment and output, especially in the market if there is a more demand of goods and services causing the price to high. And also it can encourage more employment, diba? So here, as unemployment falls, there will be an upward pressure on wages. So since wages constitute a significant portion of the total production cost, so there is a high demand for goods and services that will lead to rising prices as demand may outstrip the supply. So moreover, firms here raise prices in order to increase their profit margin. So there is a situation also wherein that there is a high inflation and also high unemployment. And that is what we call stagflation. So there is a simultaneously occurrence of high rates of unemployment and inflation. So mataas yung inflation at mataas din ang unemployment. So mahirap ito, kasi mahal pa yung goods at saka yung services, tapos marami pa ang mawawalan ng trabaho. So this is actually a problem. So what are the combined effects of unemployment and inflation? Meron silang mga combined effects. So number one is the insufficient or absence of income to support the basic needs of the family. Mahal pa yung bilihin, wala pang trabaho, nga, diba? So there is an insufficient or absence of income. Another, it can lower the purchasing power specifically for fixed income earners. So noon, in year 1972, for this $1, marami na tayong mabibili, But now, maliit na lang yung $1. Or imagine, 500 pesos. Noon, mapupuno mo pa yung basket ng mga goods and services. Ngayon, parang tig-dalawa na lang na pieces of goods ang mabibili mo for 500 pesos. it's because of the inflation. Kasi kapag tataas yung presyo, yung money mo is malulower yung value niya. So kung noon, in your 500 pesos, mapupuno mo pa yung basket mo, but now, hindi na. Kasi nagmahal na yung mga presyo. Diba? So another effect is the poverty and hunger. And also malnutrition. Siyempre, kung mataas na yung bilihin, mataas yung presyo ng mga bilihin, tapos wala ka pang trabaho, gutom, 'di ba? Magugutom ka. So, it will lead to poverty. Then lastly, we have social crimes. So, why social crimes exist? Para sa pamilya, no? Kasi walang mahanap na trabaho, walang pera. So, what is your way to earn money? So, maybe you probably engage in crimes. So, may mga tao, magnakaw na lang, may mga tao na hold up, no, just to earn money. Kasi mahal na yung mga bilihin, tapos wala pang trabaho, 'di ba? So, these are the effects, no, of unemployment and inflation. So, that's all for today's session, no, about unemployment. And I hope you would realize, no, how can you take part, no, as students, how can you take part to solve the problems of unemployment and even inflation.